Hello everyone, in this video I'd like to discuss about adding interstitial ads to your game. An interstitial ad is a type of advertising that is displayed in our game, occupying the whole screen area or a large portion of it. The user might be tempted to click more often on this type of ad, so this could be a nice method of maximizing your earnings. Anyway, in case you later decide to disable this type of ad, you can do it easily at any time. Right now, our game supports banner ads. These ads are displayed in the left lower corner of our game and are also present during the gameplay. What I want to achieve is to display an interstitial ad at the end of each game, so as soon as our player car collides with an enemy car, we want to display an interstitial ad. By displaying these ads every time a user loses the game can become annoying for them, but I'll show you how to display these ads only after several games has been lost. So let's get going. I'll switch to my Eclipse IDE and first let's locate the code that displays the banner ad in our game. The code is located inside the highwayspeed.java file. By scrolling through this file we can see the lines of code that are used to load and display the banner ad. Let's see how we can implement an interstitial ad. We'll also keep the banner ads in our game, but these can be easily disabled in case you want to stick only with interstitial ads. I'll start by opening a new web browser page and search for AdMob interstitial ad on Google. The first link on the result page will take us to Google developer's site, which describes what interstitial ads are and how to implement them in your app. In order to be able to use interstitial ads into your app, you will have to use the new Google Play Services library. Luckily for us, our application already uses this library, so you don't need to import it anymore into your project. Then we need to declare an instance of an interstitial variable, and finally we load the ad and display it. The code presented here is also identical to what we'll use in our app. However, we need to make slightly changes in order for the code to be compatible with our app. But first we need to create a new AdMob unit ID. We already created an ID for a banner ad in a previous lesson when we changed the ad unit ID with our ID, but this time we'll need an interstitial ad unit ID. Let's get back to our browser and create that ID. I will access my AdMob account in order to create a new ad unit ID. This time I will choose interstitial as the type of the ad that I want to display, and I'm only asked about a name for this ad unit, which will simply be interstitial in my case. I will click save and a new ad unit ID is generated for us. This is the unit ID that we will use to create our interstitial ad. Let's get back to our Eclipse editor, and if we open the surface.java file, we can see that all the game logic can be found here. This is the file which deals with graphics loading and displaying, playing sounds and so forth. This means that if we want to display the interstitial ad when the player loses the game, this is the file that we need to edit. We will insert our initialization code inside the surface function, also known as the constructor of this class. It is the first function called when the surface object is created, so this is a good place to initialize our AdMob variables. I'll start by declaring the necessary variables used to display the interstitial ad. I'll declare this outside of any method of this class, so before the surface method declaration. The first variable will be a publisher interstitial ad, and I'll simply call it interstitial. On the next line I will declare another variable, this one of type publisher ad request, and I will give it the name of ad request. This will deal with the actual request performed by our ad. You might see two errors here like in my situation. That's because we have to import the necessary classes or libraries containing the declaration of these two types, publisher interstitial ad and publisher ad request. I'll simply hover the mouse over the error and the pop-up appears displaying some quick fixes. The first one is the one we're looking for in my case. That will import the package containing the declaration of publisher interstitial ad. As soon as the package is imported, the error disappears. We'll do the same with the second error by importing the required package file. Another quick way to import the required packages in Eclipse is to use the Shift plus Ctrl plus O keyboard shortcut, also known as Organize Imports. Great! Now that we have declared the necessary variables, let's do something with it. As discussed earlier, we'll initialize these variables inside the surface method of our class, or our constructor. This method is called when the surface object is created, in our case when the first screen of the game is displayed. I'll start with a comment, then I will initialize the interstitial variable. This will be equal to a new publisher interstitial add object, and this method takes an argument, a context variable, which in our case will be the same variable that is passed to our method, so we can simply use context here. On the next line we'll set the addUnitID. This will be the ID that we created earlier in our addMob account. So back to my Chrome browser, I will simply copy this addUnitID and will paste it in double quotes as a parameter to the setAddUnitID method. Now that we have our interstitial variable declared and initialized, we'll do the same with the addRequest variable. This will be initialized with the new publisher addRequest object type by using its builder method and finally by calling the build function. This will actually create or build a new add request, a request performed by our ad to the Google server. And finally, we load our ad in order to be able to display it later when necessary. We do that by using the loadAdd method of our interstitial object and passing the other variable addRequest as a parameter. So, what we have achieved so far? We declared two variables, one that will actually be our interstitial ad because the ad will be displayed in its own activity or window over the game over screen of our app, and the second variable called addRequest will deal with requesting the ads from the Google server. Before being able to display an ad, we'll need to obtain one from the server. This is where addRequest comes into play. Now, when you used the addUnitID method earlier, we hard-coded our addUnitID string into it. But it will be nice to have the string located in our strings.xml file for easier editing later in case you want to modify this ID. This is the way that banner ad is also declared. So I'll open the strings.xml file located into the resources folder and then inside the values folder, and we can find the declaration for the banner ad unit ID at the end of the file. I will simply copy this line containing the ID for the banner ad and will add a comment letting us know that what follows is the declaration for the interstitial ad unit ID. Then I will paste the copied text and will replace the actual ID with the new one, which I'll copy from the surface.java file. And there is one more thing to edit here. I need to rename this string from banner ad user ID to interstitial ad user ID. And that's about it. Then let's take a look at the implementation of the banner ad in our game. So we open the highwayspeed.java file and on line 46 we read our banner ad unit ID from the string.xml file and we use it on line 52 to set the ad unit ID. We will need to do something similar with our interstitial ad, so I will copy this line that retrieves the ad unit ID from the strings.xml file and will paste it in my surface.java file just before we initialize the interstitial variable. Next, I need to change this banner ad unit ID into interstitial ad unit ID, and we'll do the same for the string resource. And finally, we can replace the actual addUnitId with the interstitial addUnitId string variable. So, to recap, in order to be able to easily edit both addUnitIds, the one from the banner add and the other one from interstitial add from a single place, the strings.xml file, we put them both in the same file and then we read those ID and we use them to initialize our banner and interstitial adds variables. I hope I didn't make things too complicated to understand. And the last step before being able to display the interstitial add in our game is to actually find the place we want to display it. We decided that we want to display the add just after the player crashes or collides with an enemy car, so on the game over screen. Now, if we look through this surface.java file, we can find a variable called state, which holds the actual state of our game. This could take several values like playing, pause, settings, and one of these values is also game over. This is the value that we are interested in, because we want to display our interstitial add when the state variable becomes equal to game over. Now, there are many lines of code in this file, so in order to find the state equals game over statement, I will perform a search. Again, we'll use the Ctrl+F keyboard shortcut in order to display the find replace window, and we'll enter state equals game over in the find input field. We'll press enter and voila! The state equals game over line is found in our code. Great! This is the place that we will use to display our interstitial add. We can see that as soon as the state of the game becomes game over, the music is also stopped. So after that line, we will call the method that will actually display our add. And we name this method displayInterstitial. Again, we receive an error telling us that the method displayInterstitial is undefined. And that's correct because we didn't declare our method yet. But we'll use the quick fix to do just that. This will declare a new method called displayInterstitial for us. Let's Ctrl click on the method call in order to point us to the declaration of it. And what this method is going to do? Well, as the name states, this will actually display our interstitial add. So, we created our add, we load it from the server, so now it's time to display it. But we only want to display the add if it is available for us to display it. With other words, if it's already loaded. So we'll check if the add is loaded by using the interstitial isLoaded method call. And only if the add is loaded, we'll display it by calling the show method of our interstitial variable. And that's about it. Let's give it a try, although will not work, and I'll explain in a moment why it won't work, but let's see that with our own eyes. I'm going to run the game in the BlueStacks emulator, and I press play. And as we can see, as soon as we collide with an enemy vehicle, the game crashes. So it returns to the home screen by exiting the game. Now, if you are testing this on an emulator, you might not see much information about the crash in your logcat, the place where the errors are displayed. I discovered that by testing the game on my phone, so a real device. And the reason of the crash was that the isLoaded method call needs to take place in the main UI thread. What does this mean? Currently, our application starts with its main activity, which is highway speed, located in the highwayspeed.java file. This activity deals mostly with the state of our application, like started, paused, resumed, and so on. But the main logic, the main code for our game, is located in the surface.java file, as we saw earlier. The surface class extends a surface activity, which is used when dealing with graphics-intensive applications like our game. The long story short is that we have to run the code that displays our add from a main thread of our application. In order to do that, I will use the activity run on UI thread method, which will take a runnable as a parameter. And inside this runnable, we'll put our code, which will check if the ad is loaded and will display it. But we need to insert our code inside of another method called run. These are a bit more advanced topics when talking about Android, but we have to use them here in order to be able to display our ad. And now, if we run the game again in our emulator and we start playing it, as soon as we crash, we can see a new ad displayed, an ad that occupies a lot of our screen. We can close the ad. It's important not to click your own ads, as Google might detect that, and thinking that you want to monetize your own ads, it might suspend your AdMob account. I'll show you how to avoid this situation by the end of this lesson. And now if we decide to play the game one more time and we crash, no ad is displayed. Why is that? Well, that's because we only load our ad one time when creating the surface object, but we didn't load another ad after we display the first one. So how do we deal with that? Simple. We need to figure a way of loading the ad as soon as we close the previous one. And one place to do just that is inside the resume method. Why the resume? Well, if you remember, I told you that each ad is displayed in its own activity or window. This window is displayed over our game over window. So when we close the ad window, the game returns to its game over screen. In other words, the resume method of the surface class is called, because the surface activity is brought back from the background. And inside this method, resume, we'll put our code which loads another ad for us, making it available to display it after the next car crash. So I'll open the resume method declaration, and at the end of it I'll simply add the line that I used earlier to load my ad, which is interstitial load ad, and will pass the add request variable as a parameter. I'll save the file, and if I run the game one more time and will collide with an enemy, an interstitial ad is displayed. Great, let's close the ad and play the game one more time. And another ad is displayed. Playing it a third time and we can see another ad. Great, so this is working as expected. But what if you decide that displaying so many ads to the user might irritate him? We want our users to play as long as they like and don't get angry on our game, right? Let's see how we can lower the number of the ads that will be displayed when the player crashes his car. Let's say that we want to display the interstitial ad only after 2, 3 or more crashes and not just any crash. It's very easy to implement that in our game. Back to our display interstitial method declaration, before we actually call the run on UI thread method, we check if we want to display the ad or not. Let's say that we want to display an ad every 2 car crashes. We will use a variable which we will call it ad count, because it will keep track of the number of ads displayed for us. More exactly, this will keep track of the number of crashes, but let's leave it like this for now. In order to test if you need to display the ad or not, we simply check for the rest of the division of this number, ad count, which will be an integer, with the number of crashes that we want to display the ad. For example, if we want to display an ad every 2 crashes, then the rest of the division of this number with 2 will have to be 0. You can easily modify this number to specify after how many crashes do you want the ad to be displayed. So for example, if I put 3 here, then after each 3 crashes, the ad is displayed. The next ad will be displayed after 6th crash, the next after the 9th crash, and so on. Same if I put 49 here, The first ad will be displayed after 49th crash. The next ad will be displayed after 98th crash, and so on. So, this way you limit the occurrence of the interstitial ad during the game. And finally, we need to increase this ad count number after each run, so we keep track of our crashes. And if we put the cursor over the error at line 1252, we can see that we didn't declare yet our ad count variable, so we need to do that. We will scroll up and declare our variable after the add request variable declaration. This will also be a public variable of type int or integer, and we initialize this with 0. So we'll start from 0 and we'll count by 1 each time the game over screen is displayed. And now if we run the game, we can see an ad because our variable was 0. But if you play the game one more time, no ad is displayed. That's because our variable is now 1. Playing it one more time and another ad is displayed because our variable has now the value of 2. And finally, I want to discuss about how to avoid clicking on your own ads by mistake so Google will not penalize you or even suspend your AdMob account. But before getting into that subject, let's see how to completely disable these interstitial ads without making too many changes through your code. The easiest way to disable the interstitial ads in case you decide to do that for any reason is to simply delete or comment the line from the string.xml file, which declares your interstitial ad unit ID. Same as with the banner ads, if you comment this line or replace the ID with some other text which is not a valid ad unit ID, the ads will not appear anymore in your game. Great! Now let's see how we can display a test ad instead of real ads so you don't have to worry about when clicking it, even by mistake. Let's start by running the game one more time. The game appears in our emulator and as we can see, a banner ad is displayed in the bottom left corner of our game. Now if we switch to our logcat window and we filter the results by the following keyword, add request, with capital A and R, we can see a few lines telling us that we have to use add request builder, add test device, followed by something that appears to be a random text, which is actually the ID of your current device running the game, the BlueStacks emulator in my case. Now, I'm going to copy this line by using the Ctrl+C shortcut, and if we remember well, we've seen few similar lines starting with add test device in our highwayspeed.java file. So if we open that file, oh, it's already opened here, and scroll down through it, voila, we found some lines starting with add test device. This allows us to add our device, being an emulator or a real device like a phone or tablet. So this will allow us to add it as a test device. What does this mean? It means that there will be no actual ads displayed on our screen, but instead a test ad will be displayed. This way we will still be able to test the appearance of ads in our game, but we don't have to worry about clicking our own ads by mistake. So let's paste the copied line after the other add test device statements, but before the build method call. And I'll have to delete the first part of the copied text until the add test device word, and will replace the end of the line with a comment that will let us know that this is the ID of our BlueStacks emulator. So we managed to add the emulator to the list of testing devices. This will only affect the banner ad so far, because for our interstitial ad we used another add request variable. So we'll need to add the same line of code there in case we want to display a test ad as our interstitial ad also. Let's switch to surface.java file, and somewhere at the beginning of the file, inside the surface method declaration, well, not really at the beginning of it, but in the first part of the file, at line 174, we will add the line which I will copy from highwayspeed.java. I will add it before the build method call. Let's try to format the text a little to become more readable, and now if we run the game again for the last time in this lesson, I promise, as soon as the game loads, we can see a test banner ad that replaced our banner ad in the left bottom corner of our app. It says 320 by 50, so the size of the banner ad, and then test banner and ad mob. If we play the game, a nice test interstitial ad is now displayed instead of a real ad which was displayed earlier. And if we go further and click this ad, let's say by mistake or even intentionally, we can see a Google page with information about Google mobile ads. And if we switch back to our game and close the interstitial ad and click on the small banner ad, the same Google mobile ads page is displayed. So, to summarize, in this lesson we integrated interstitial ads into our game. We found out that this is an ad which occupies the whole screen estate, so the chances of users clicking on this more interesting ad are higher. This way, we can maximize our earnings. I hope that in your app, you will have to use the new Google Play Services library. Luckily for us, our application already uses this library, so you don't need to import it anymore into your project. Then we need to declare an instance of an interstitial variable, and finally we load the ad and display it. The code presented here is also identical to what we'll use in our app. However, we need to make slightly changes in order for the code to be compatible with our app. But first we need to create a new AdMob unit ID. We already created an ID for a banner ad. By scrolling through this file, we can see the lines of code that are used to load and display the banner ad. Let's see how we can implement an interstitial ad. We'll also keep the banner ads in our game, but these can be easily disabled in case you want to stick only with interstitial ads. I'll start by opening a new web browser page and search for AdMob interstitial ad on Google. The first link on the result page will take us to Google developer's site, which describes what interstitial ads are and how to implement them in your app. In order to be able to use interstitial ads in a previous lesson when we changed the ad unit ID with our ID, but this time we'll need an interstitial ad unit ID. Let's get back to our browser and create that ID. I will access my AdMob account in order to create a new ad unit ID. This time I will choose interstitial as the type of the ad that I want to display, and I'm only asked about a name for this ad unit, which will simply be interstitial in my case. I will click save, and a new ad unit ID is generated for us. This is the unit ID that we... Hello everyone! In this video I'd like to discuss about adding interstitial ads to your game. An interstitial ad is a type of advertising that is displayed in our game, occupying the whole screen area or a large portion of it. The user might be tempted to click more often on this type of ad, so this could be a nice method of maximizing your earnings. Anyway, in case you later decide to disable this type of ad, you can do it easily at any time. Right now, our game supports banner ads. These ads are displayed in the left lower corner of our game and are also present during the gameplay. What I want to achieve is to display an interstitial ad at the end of each game, so as soon as our player car collides with an enemy car, we want to display an interstitial ad. By displaying these ads every time a user loses the game can become annoying for them, but I'll show you how to display these ads only after several games has been lost. So let's get going. I'll switch to my Eclipse IDE, and first let's locate the code that displays the banner ad in our game. The code is located inside the highwayspeed.java file.